My loves, I want to talk about fawning and specifically the significant downside of that stress response. This is partly inspired by a recent sacred post and podcast episode that I called AI is Not Your Best Life Coach. That was issue 42 of the sacred. It turned out to be one of the most shared and saved and commented on posts that I've ever written on all of my platforms. I'm on Substack now, by the way. You can find me there. I'm the Danielle Laporte, whatever the Substack URL is. I don't know. I'm new over there. My focus with the conversation with AI was on the emotional manipulation that can come from artificial intelligence. That essentially the algorithm is being trained by our behavior and inputs to kiss ass. It's called fawning. Is it happening across the board? No, not all of the time. You can actually train your chat GPT to be more cynical, to give you resistance, to challenge your intellectual thinking and all of that. The point there was about the downside of the programmability and various forms of AI telling us what we want to hear. And that is a dangerous place to be in. And to rely on AI as our spiritual director, there's all sorts of unhealthy implications in that. What I want to talk about today is fawning and how that works in humans. I'm more interested in how it works in humanity. So fight, flight, freeze, fawn. These are all now very well-known behaviors of a dysregulated nervous system. I prefer the term imbalanced or balanced nervous system. It feels less clinical and more human. And I think that fawning as a stress response gets a little bit misunderstood. I think it's gotten lumped into fight, flight, and freeze. And I think the implications of fawning are actually a bit understated. I really want to understand this. So fawning is typically a character adaptation. This is all about self-preservation. So fawning is not a physiological response like fight, flight, or freeze. Fight, flight, freeze reactions are actually driven by a hormonal cocktail. They're happening in our brain and our body. It's adrenaline, right? So what happens is there's a perceived, emphasis on perceived threat. And usually we're feeling emotionally threatened. Of course, sometimes we feel physically threatened, and that can be a perception and not a reality as well. But if we're not well-resourced, if we're not balanced, if we're not rested, we're going to have reactions to the perceived threat. So we'll either react in fight mode, which is defensive and or aggressive, or we go into flight mode, we want to escape and we want to avoid. Or if you're like myself, you just go into shutdown mode, you freeze. So the body chemistry is driving our emotional response. And what we want to do is we want to be in the driver's seat of our emotional responses and reactions. Right? We don't want the chemistry to take us over. So this is the exact reason why we do all the things, why we do all the spiritual practices, so that we are in charge of our body and our brain chemistry, not the other way around. So I call this your default stress reaction. Your default stress reaction. That's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And what we want to get really good at is a more conscious stress response. So instead of default, it's conscious, it's aware. There will always be stress, positive, negative. And instead of being reactive, like kind of knee-jerk, we want to be mindful and we want to respond with all of our faculties. So fawning is different than fighting, flighting, and freezing because it's not a physiological reaction. In the case of fawning, our adrenaline is not what's making us kiss up to somebody in order to survive. Fawning is more of, I would call it like a personality gimmick. Everybody does it at some point. Some of us do it more than others. Some of us do it a lot chronically. And that's really what I want to help lend some healing to. When we're in fawning mode, whatever degree you're in, what we're thinking is that it's actually safer to please other people than to be our authentic self. And it's understandable, but as we're adults, it's actually really tragic. Fawning is typically a trauma response. It's usually developed in childhood at a time when people pleasing kept us safe. So it really made sense back then. It was a good move for our 6-year-old little selves to people please. Sweetness got some of us out of trouble. Pouring on the compliments kept some of us out of real danger. Fawning over people who are bigger than you physically, who seem to be more powerful than you, makes sense when you want to get the love, that you want. So when you're a vulnerable kid, fawning is a really useful, sensible skill. But when you're an adult, fawning backfires. It backfires on your self-esteem and it backfires on relationships. Okay, there's another source of fawning that doesn't come from childhood, doesn't come from family of origin or like early in life crises. So fawning can also be activated in your adult life by ongoing repetitive stress and crises, and also by chronic physical pain, which is really understandable. So the easiest way to understand this is we get worn the France down and we feel weakened. So we fawn, we kiss up and we get overly complimentary and genteel in order to get the support that we need. Makes sense, Or, I've witnessed people move into a fawning response in hopes of being met in the same way. Like what I mean by that is when you're praising somebody and you're being tender and gentle with somebody because you're in chronic pain, emotionally or physically, I think there's this deep and really sensible longing to be responded to in that way. It's almost as if that fawning behavior is a request for that to be reflected, like, please be tender with me. Please praise me. Please support me. Please compliment me. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now let's get into the really dark side of this, where it makes sense if you're traumatized, but we really got to work to heal this. And of course, I want to unpack how we heal this. Always try and leave us with a solution. Fawning erodes trust in relationships. It erodes trust in every direction. It erodes self-trust and it's really fractures stuff with other people. So years ago, this is many years ago, if anybody has worked with me in the last few years, it's not you. I worked with the sweetest person who was a habitual fawner. So they poured heaps of flattery on people, all directions. Like they would flatter me, they would flatter the boss, they would flatter everybody on the team. And it was constant. It was all the time. Like you just knew this person was going to just pour on the sugar. It happened in meetings. It showed up in how they wrote their emails. It was in voicemails. It was copious amounts of compliments. And this really kind of bowing to other people through excessive gratitude. They always deferred to other people. They went last in meetings to voice their opinions. And they always did this with this like kind of wide-eyed, really freaking earnest smile. And here's the thing. You might think that that behavior came with somebody who was really shy, but this person actually wasn't shy. They were really dynamic. They were very outgoing. They spoke to lots of people with great ease. What they were is they were traumatized and they were burdened by what was going on in their life. And it became evident to me over time that this fawning behavior was coming from some family of origin stuff and from some more current hardships that they were in. They were overworking. I noticed they were pulling some strange hours, like answering emails at at 1 in the morning. What's going on there? You need to be sleeping, get your cortisol levels in check. They were definitely making things more complicated, that's my kryptonite on any team. But they were asking the same questions multiple times to multiple people. And I thought that was actually an expression of the fawning, like, hi, I'm coming to you for help because you're so smart. And I'm going to make you feel great by turning to you. And it was out of control. They were profusely apologizing for inconsequential things. I'm sorry. We're like, this is no big deal, babe. It was heartbreaking. It was really also very cringy. And it was incredibly annoying. But the biggest professional downside was that their fawning eroded trust in the team. So we couldn't really believe their opinions. Their recommendations were always just a little bit sus. I often want to say, like, are you saying this because this is what you think I want to hear? And by the way, this is my contention with the excessive, listen to my words really carefully here, the excessive use of artificial intelligence for spiritual direction, that it is just telling us what we want to hear. With the person who was a chronic fawner, I wanted to know if they actually did some research in advance to form their opinion, or were they just having this kind of knee-jerk reaction in meetings like, oh yeah, I love that, or oh, you don't like it, I don't like it either. I could see that this person could not take the emotional risks that leaders need to take of, you're not going to be agreed with all the time or liked all the time, or not everybody can think you're sane all the time. And then this was a really tough part of things. The excessive fawning from this person had me really question whether this person would be resilient enough for feedback on anything, on the quality of their work, on the changing of the vision from what we all agreed on. I came to learn that this really, truly wonderful person, they were such a great human being with this annoying behavior. They'd been dealing with ongoing back pain issues, which for any of us who have been through that, it can be really, literally, crippling physically. What a setback, emotionally draining. They dealt with anxiety, which I learned over a series of just, loving conversations like, how's life? What's going on? Like, how you doing at 1 a.m. when you're submitting this stuff? Like, what's up? And then, you get to know people, and I learned that they were estranged from their mother. So they were looking for love, and they were needing a gentle place to land, and they were kind of desperate about it. Fawning erodes self-worth. It makes people in our life question our motives and our integrity, and it can create as much strain as all the other default stress reactions, the arguing, the bailing on things, and the shutting down. And here's the great news. Fawning is so healable. Like, we can grow out of this. Fawning is really just the shadow self's call to the power of self-acceptance. The shadow self is saying, accept all of you. Yeah, it's an invitation. It's a doorway. Okay, so I have a really concise list for us about what fawning, default stress reactions, behaviors essentially looks like. This is from my Nourish System program, which really gets into a whole exploration and explanation of what the nervous system is, parasympathetic, sympathetic, and the different types of stress reactions, and then the healing approaches for each of those. Okay, so here's the fawning list. Who relates? We're all going to relate at some point, some of us more than others. 1, people pleasing. Difficulty saying no. Incapacity to create healthy lines of demarcation, also known as boundaries, but I like to be really specific about that. Healthy lines of demarcation, because we can have unhealthy boundaries too, tendency to avoid conflict, assuming responsibility for others' emotions and states of mind. That would also be called codependency. Over apologizing. Apologizing is a great spiritually mature thing to do, but excessively, no. Incapacity to verbalize and share one's needs, wants, and aspirations. I mean, that is a great bullet point for all of us, really. Like, I'm still learning how to verbalize my needs, wants, and aspirations in certain settings. Okay. Incapacity to share opinions because you are afraid of being ridiculed. No one wants to be shot down, made fun of. Difficulty in self-expression out of fear of being mocked and looked down upon. Chronic pain or illness as a result of living day to day with a fawn response. So, do you see yourself in that? Do you see some loved ones or some hard to love people but deserve love? Those are the behaviors of fawning. Now, let's talk about how to work through it. The first level of awareness with any of our stress reactions, whether you're a fighter, flighter, freezer, or a fawner, is that this is an unconscious defense mechanism. So it's coming from what I call the basement of your psyche. And that stuff just has to come up. You don't know what's in the dark because it's in the dark. So we love what's in the dark. We don't judge what's in the dark. It's just coming up for our conscious attention. So this fawning behavior is been in the basement and it's offering you a chance at survival because ridicule and being looked down upon could have you maybe lose your job. There is a threat. There could be physical threats. It wants you to survive. It wants you to make it through. It wants you to be alive. It wants you to keep the gig. Okay. So the fawning response that if you look at closely will have you cringe, go, oh my God, I need to melt that. It's actually a gift. So first of all, we don't fight against the fawning. We love it. Okay. I see this fawning behavior in myself. It's hard to love. It's costing me some relationships. It's really hard on my self-esteem. And I'm amazing and conscious and alive because I see it. That's half the victory, is being aware of it. Okay, now I'm going to dissolve it. I'm going to transmute this fawning into wholeness, into authenticity, to my true self. Okay, so the loving reminder here is that you're loved. You're loved. You're loved. You were made from love. On behalf of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, you can trust life. Life is wanting you to win. Life is here for you 24/7, your entire life. You can trust your inherent value, right? You're going to offer yourself loving kindness. So here are the actions. I'll give you some specifics, but generally how we dissolve what's happening in our bodies in terms of fighting for our survival, fawning for our survival, is we got to get the oxytocin flowing. Oxytocin is like the love drug. So it's about bonding. It's about building trust and love and empathy. It's about creating, seeking, knowing when there's genuine connection, genuine. So again, we approach the fawning behavior with love, not with self-criticism. That's a backfire. And it's actually that loving approach that helps us transmute the fawning into strength. So specifics, breath work, obviously, whatever works for you. Intentional breathing. Intentional could just be your exhale is longer than your inhale. You do natural breathing, which means you inhale and exhale through your nose. Your mouth is closed. You could do box breathing, where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. You could do 4, 6, 8, breathe. Whatever works, breathe, because that is prana, that is life, that is presence. Presence is where the power is. Gratitude helps with fawning. Appreciation, journaling. Okay. And then actually being vulnerable. Seeking safety in a vulnerable way. Looking for intimacy in healthy ways. Tactile things, hugs, getting hugs, receiving hugs, cuddling, safe touch. Laughter with friends. Laughter is so great for oxytocin. Laughter is so great for the vagus nerve. Laughter is medicine. Nourishing and nurturing yourself and others. I know that's like big and general. But what if you started every day with nourishing thoughts, which, by the way, is part of my heart-centered day planner. We start the day with nourishing thoughts. Spending time with the people that you love, spending time with people where you are safe to emphasize depth, where you are getting depth from them, where you're getting love and acceptance. You get to go where the love is. Random acts of kindness. These all build resiliency and like agility with your heart and your consciousness. Collaborating with like-minded individuals. Go where the love is. And then this is one of my favorite points. Listening openly without judgment. Because to give is to receive. When you can listen to somebody else express their fears and their fight and their flight and their neuroses and their concerns, and you're not judging all over them because love, you can extend that love to yourself and you will be more authentic and less fawny with other people. I feel really hopeful, and it gives me a lot of happiness that millions of us are tuning into our nervous systems. We know what it means. Like 5 years ago, I didn't know the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And now I think that nervous system balancing should be the top priority for everybody. Like number one, biggest, biggie, toppest priority for every human on the planet, even the monastics. Healthy people heal the world. So here's a send-off for the fawner in each of us. And if you don't identify as a fawner, cool, you can help other people. You can be this energy and help the fawners come into their wholeness. Their revelations of strength can help people dissolve the trauma response of kissing up to everybody so that they survive. Acknowledge your own needs. Voice your opinions. Own your preferences. You can do that with grace, or you can do it bold. You just do you. Own your preferences, whatever you do. Make self-expression as easy as breathing. I should do something about that. I should write a poem about that or something. Maybe I could do a sonic something for us, a power word set. Make self-expression as easy as breathing. That's a lifetime of work there. Offer up over apologizing. Just take that habit of I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, sorry, and you just give that up to God. Give it up to the sky on your morning walk. And honor your emotions. All of them, especially the difficult, unpleasant ones. And then we honor the emotions of others. I have a really cool quiz about identifying your stress default reactions, which helps us get to our conscious default responses. It's free, it's fun. This is one of my favorite quizzes. It's called the Stressed to Blessed Quiz. Head to daniellelaporte.com/stress quiz. And you won't be stressed, promise. All right, my loves, I'm so glad you're here. Be yourself. We want to love you for it. I will be here next week with love, always, Danielle. Thank you so much for listening, for feeling, for spreading the word with love.